Here is a totally new RTS game project from a sole developer made in the Unreal Engine 4 and inspired by Command & Conquer, Supreme Commander and Earth 2140. Currently called Paths to Supremacy and already 3 years in development, it looks stunning considering it is made by a single amateur game developer and ex-ARMA modder with Unreal Marketplace assets here reworked to fit his vision. I have to thank my fellow real-time strategy fan and content creator, The Doctor, for discovering this potential gem and telling me about it. You should check out his channel for raw gameplay of your favorite past and new RTS games down below. Now do keep in mind there is no multiplayer planned for this game, it will be strictly a single player experience as multiplayer would exceed the resources and time this developer has. Another important thing to note is that instead of factions, there will be an extensive research tree in this game, and so while you start off from a generic futuristic military faction, you develop it into a unique one every time you play as you research and apply new tech. Add to this the dynamic of always starting from a new randomly generated starting position and you will have much more variety than you might think at first glance. A very interesting and rarely used feature in such RTS games will be actual fuel and ammo used by units and turrets, which needs to be resupplied, but if you dislike this feature, you will be able to turn it off. For more such new and upcoming RTS games, do check out my previous videos using the link above or below in the description, where you will also find a link to the Paths of Supremacy official YouTube channel for future updates from the developer. Now let me show and tell you more about this game and its progress. The first version wasn't much to look at: a map, few vehicles and buildings, sounds and effects. The basic core of an RTS environment, the scale it would use and what it would play like. A year later, the new map looked much better and base building became a thing. There was the familiar right side UI construction menu, energy system for operating buildings, a shield to protect them. There were turrets, units to produce, enemies attacking, and you could rotate each building before placing it. It would take another year to upgrade to a full day-night cycle with waypoints, formation movement and unit markers, as well as actual resource collection. A very cinematic first-person vehicle view was added to allow for close-ups of the action. Higher quality sounds and effects were added and the developer was already fully committed to his vision at this point. I personally love the atmosphere created here, and it looks different enough from anything else, as well as mildly futuristic and yet contemporary. The EU flags on bases are a nice touch, considering the developer himself is from Germany. This clip shows the full transition from day to night time, complete with shadows moving across the terrain following the sun movements, base buildings turning on floodlights, vehicles their headlights, and even a nice flare as the sun sets. The whole base looks quite different, bathed in the green and yellow lights alongside the pure white of the floodlights. This is what the game looks like after 3 years of development and using the Unreal Engine version 4.27, running on a 1080 Ti GPU and an Intel i7 8700K CPU the developer used to capture this footage. When it comes to units, for now there are only ground vehicles, mostly tanks, along with separate support trucks for fuel, ammo and repair. There are also many types of turrets with different weapon systems. Each vehicle in this game has its own sounds, both for movement on their heavy tracks or wheels and when shooting huge guns. As the tank tonnage goes up, so does the caliber and firepower of these guns. Turrets have their own weapon systems, with some firing faster, others with double barrels, and one type in parabolic artillery-like arcs. These artillery turrets lob shells quite a distance, but also very slowly, so while they deal a lot of damage, they have a harder time actually hitting a moving enemy target. The upside is that their explosive damage is done to all nearby enemy units, as opposed to the single target damage of the other turrets. Here is an example. A bunch of tanks in close formation get hit, and while the primary target takes the most damage, all the other ones get damaged in secondary explosions coming off from the destroyed tank. The explosion propagates like a wave through the whole tank formation. The number above the tanks indicates how many resources can be recycled from the wrecks, another gameplay mechanic I will explain in more detail. The camera in Paths of Supremacy is designed in such a way as to allow you to enjoy the game world from any perspective. Top-down God view, which can be quickly turned into a close-up of an individual unit. As for the vehicle cameras, there will be a few options to choose from to enjoy both the first and third-person camera view of all the battles. Every map in Paths to Supremacy will have a more or less distinctive height map and landscape. This is not a typical feature for an RTS game, as most of them have very flat terrain. Sure, there are mountains and rivers and such, but they aren't playable, just for show. But in this game, landscape is part of the difficulty, because with different highs and lows on the map, the buildings and turrets cannot be built everywhere, and their lines of fire will be limited by obstructions like rocks or hills. There will also be a large amount of vegetation, obscuring enemies and bases alike. However, to make base building easier, you can order for a landscape cleanup to be done, cutting down large trees, blowing up rocks, and freeing up space for new base expansion. The main resource in Paths to Supremacy is going to be metal. It will be mined by extractors created by vehicles which are constructed in vehicle bay buildings. When they are sent to a primary metal node, they unpack and start passively producing metal until the primary node is used up, unlocking the second layer of resources. To keep harvesting metal on that spot, a new, larger vehicle is necessary to create a new extractor on top of that new second layer of metal. The same thing is repeated a third time, with an even more expensive and bigger vehicle which turns into yet another type of a metal extractor on top of those third layer metal deposits. Those extractors do need energy to operate, and as you construct bigger versions, they draw more power, requiring you to construct more power plant buildings in your base. A feature I found quite innovative is how at the beginning of a new mission, your camera and sensors appear to be all glitchy and with poor resolution. This isn't a technical glitch, but a lack of energy which is necessary to improve resolution and gain. So when you click on a radar building and boost power used for sensors, your view gets a bit clearer, and as you keep boosting it, the better the signal and picture gets. This requires actual energy supply at your base, and it is a neat way to incorporate some actual commander roleplay with the energy mechanic. It also means that by losing the radar station or power plants, you lose the ability to clearly see the base, units, and the battlefield. Along with the sensor quality, there is also the radar range mechanic. It is also controlled from the radar station, and it limits your ability to expand or command units outside its operational range. Try to move units outside your radar range and you won't be able to until you spend more energy to increase it. This means you can trade off quality for distance and vice versa until you have enough energy to boost both. This range also limits the resources you can find and gather, as until you boost the radar range to encompass new resource nodes, you won't be able to exploit them. Already, you can use several formations when ordering units to move, like a box or line and all the 2D shapes in between. That is, of course, until you go out of your radar range and lose sight of them. If you remember any similar mechanics in older RTS games, do let me know in the comments below. My only gripe with this system is that they take up too perfect of a formation. It needs some realism in the form of more offset realistic positions. Now about those ammo and fuel mechanics. You can't even construct turrets if you have no ammo in your base stockpiles, and the way to get it is to convert raw metal being collected into both it and fuel using sliders. The efficiency of this process will be upgradable with future research. The second way to get ammo or fuel is to create it out of the already collected metal which has been stockpiled in your base. It is not an instant process, as it takes actual time to craft ammo and fuel inside your base, while the stockpile capacity can be increased by adding storage buildings inside your base for all three resources. These do not require power to operate, and each is visually different. When it comes to rearming and repairing turrets and units in your base, you have the choice of 3 different support stations which you can construct next to them. Green for health, meaning repairs, yellow for ammo reloading, and blue for fuel refueling. The last station is a recycle station which dismantles destroyed wrecks of vehicles into raw metal. As for repair, rearm and refueling of your units on the battlefield, there are 3 types of specialized trucks for this use. Sure, the differently colored power beams look a bit silly, but whichever way they are designed to look like, they still do the same function like in many other RTS games which have these mechanics. If you like or perhaps dislike these ammo and fuel gameplay mechanics, do let me know why in the comments below. When it comes to base building, that too is initially limited in the size of the area inside which you can construct new buildings or turrets. To expand that circular area further out from your base, you have to pay in metal for every 10% increment with increasing cost. But building walls inside this bigger area is totally worth the investment, as you not only reduce the amount of territory you have to actively defend, but also prevent enemy units from sniping your power and resource storage buildings inside the base. As for the current temporary enemy AI, there are only spawn locations on the map from which enemy vehicles attack your base and units. From what we can see, this is still early stage game development, but there will be actual missions and enemy bases to attack and destroy. These enemy units support each other when in range and also move to areas where the most action is at and where they can deal critical damage to the player's base. As development continues, the research tree will be implemented, after which helicopters are planned to be added as units. Shields and outposts will be interesting additions after that, giving more defensive options to the player. Proper enemy AI with base building is another big upcoming feature, along with small ones like new sounds and music, user interface update, tutorial missions, and all the other features you would need to properly play a game like this. I know this is one of those projects that is on a long road and isn't playable right now, so for soon to be or already released RTS games, check out the card on the screen or my playlist in the description. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!